Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Stephanie Katsaros, and I am the president of Brightbeat. And here, though, I'm really working with and kind of made this all happen because of the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition and Chicago Sustainability Task Force. So first of all, just a little bit of housekeeping, as I mentioned, to prevent background noise. I've put everyone on mute, but feel free to unmute yourself when it's time to speak. And if you can post questions in the chat, we've got some help to make sure that your questions are addressed, and we'll try to answer them during the discussion, or it just prompts opportunity to keep the conversation going. So my business, Brightbeat, it's a women-owned sustainability consultancy. And we work with a lot of cities and facilities and events, and a lot of waste issues have been what we address. And so the questions that we're covering today and the issues are things I've been working on for 10 years. And Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, which has been around since 2012, based in Chicago, is a thriving nonprofit, and our goal is to advance diversion and composting of organics in Illinois through advocacy, program implementation, market and business development, policy, and outreach. And some of our members, who are many here today: DuPage County, the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, Eco Products and Vegware, St. Louis Composting, Collective Resource Waste Management, Duke's Ale House. I don't know if they made it or not, but a lot of great partners. And Jen Jarland, our chairman of the board, is also assisting administratively today, and she's with Kane County. So thanks, Jen. The Chicago Sustainability Task Force is also based here in Chicago, and it's a group of large facility operators, event organizers, and program coordinators that take action to improve operational sustainability and promote environmental awareness in Chicago. And we launched 10 years ago as really initially a grant out of the US EPA with City of Chicago, and then kind of did a relaunch when there was no more funding, but a lot of enthusiasm. And so we have meetings every other month where we share best practices and learn from each other. And some of the members, who I imagine a lot of them are on this call already: Rush University Medical Center, Field Museum, Northwestern University, Loyola University, Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, Cook County Forest Preserve, Midwest Foods and Farmers Fridge. If you picture McCormick Place on down to a private business, really what prompted the meeting today was something that came out of a recent meeting. And sorry, I'm getting emails to me. What happened in a meeting that we had back in April was a discussion where a local hauler, compost hauler, described the manner in which they manage their organic stream. And essentially, the materials pre-screened and all the serveware and packaging goes to the landfill. So it wasn't a question of does the stuff break down, but that it's not even getting there. So what do we do? And how, this isn't our specialty, what do we do? And it led to kind of building the framework for this forum. And so really the purpose of this is to bring stakeholders together to address the challenges and share best practices across stakeholders. And then also really to identify solutions to manage compostable plastics. And as you all who are on this call, I would imagine many of you know that there is this is not a new problem. This is one that won't go away because there's such demand for zero waste systems. There's a distaste for petroleum-based plastic, or virgin fossil feedstock, if you will. And so really, when we have food service operators and facilities like the airports and convention centers, stadiums, universities, school districts, all these in Chicago and Illinois, it represents a nationwide or even worldwide problem. And so, the question is, are there creative ideas to manage this stream of, nutrient contaminated serveware, if you will? And, what can we do to overcome the belief that if you throw it in a green bag, it'll magically turn into soil? Because we know that's not the reality. So there are composters out there that are successfully processing compostable serveware and producing a valuable end product. So how do we scale that? And that brings us to the basis of the discussion. We've invited some speakers who are not the only ones who will talk today, but really they're experts in the field. And we've lined them up to not only share their experience, but their proposed solutions. Again, looking for creative ideas that are outside of the box that we've been focused on. And and then we'll open up the floor for questions and comments. But before that, I would like to get started by turning to Nora Goldstein. She will help set the stage. And as the editor of BioCycle magazine, she's been providing reliable industry-wide analysis for decades. And so the question I posed to Nora was, how do you assess the state of compostable packaging in the US right now? So if Nora can take the floor, I'll mute myself and we will all receive your wisdom.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Talking to you from my family room in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. So welcome to my house. The state of compostable products in the US is what I think when we all end in 2 hours, we're going to have a really good sense of what that is, what we need to do, and how to get there. So a roadmap, if you will. And so I just want to sort of lay some groundwork as to what the state of compostable products is. And I'm just going to touch on a few things. First and foremost is that certified compostable products break down during composting. That is not the issue that we have today. The issue is that non-compostable contamination is coming along with the food waste stream that also has the certified compostable products. And one of the things you hear a lot about are look-alike products. So it's a cup that looks like a compostable cup. The second factor is that the number of composters in the US that accept compostable food serviceware and packaging isn't large. We did a survey 2 years ago of full-scale composting facilities. So these are facilities that can handle incoming truckloads of food waste. And out of there were 103 composters that answered this particular question as to if they accept compostable products. And out of that, about 60 accept compostable paper products, and less than 50 take compostable bioplastic products. So in general, the state of compostable products in the US is we don't have a nationwide infrastructure of composting facilities that accept compostable products. So that's just a fact. The third thing is that there's a lot of focus on single-use packaging, and there's been various commitments. The one I'll just mention is a global commitment put together by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and a UN part of United Nations. And it was signed by packaged good companies, retailers, food service companies, packaging producers. They make a commitment to make 100% of plastic packaging reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2025. That's 5 years from now. So there clearly is demand for composting infrastructure. So really what the question boils down to is how will that demand, in addition to the current demand by food service establishments and retailers and festivals and stadiums and what Stephanie listed in the beginning, is how will this demand shape new composting infrastructure or new composting capacity at existing composting facilities, be that facilities taking food waste, yard trimmings, biosolids, it's just, we have to, is it just exclusive to food waste composting facilities? How will that capacity be financed? And, who is going to pay? Who's going to invest in this. So that's something I just wanted to put out there to everybody. And what we talked about on a call last week with the panelists was we should all end our initial comments with a solution. So while we work on that bigger question of infrastructure, for now, we need to solve for the contamination, which is a very real issue with composters, and part of the reason they don't want to take these products. And feasible fixes are in progress, you know, as we speak, which we'll hear about today, such as identification and better labeling guidelines for the products, best practices for how you manage these products in a composting facility to ensure that they disintegrate. So my idea is this. We should start a technology accelerator to keep contaminants out of organics recycling bins, and recycling too, but we're talking organics here. So for example, a scanning technology affixed to the cart or the container taking where you put the compostables in, be it in a restaurant or a kitchen. And when you, the compostable product will have a barcode, and when you hover over that, if it's accepted, a green light goes off, you can put it in. If it's not, a red light goes off. And always the default at that point is the landfill, because you also don't, or no, you can scan it over the recycling. I haven't thought it through, that's why. So the idea is, but we should start to use this concept of these accelerators, like we see in, you know, a lot of accelerators in the food recovery, wasted food prevention space. We should be able to do something like that as well. So thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Nora. It is really helpful always the way in which BioCycle can capture this information and make it digestible, because there's a lot of us who are, you know, I don't want to say peripherally engaged, but we don't know the science necessarily behind it. And so I do think that your perspective is useful. And then I also think that there's a lot to be said about creative ideas and using technologies. So thank you for sharing that. And what I want to do now is move to Rhodes Yepsen from Biodegradable Products Institute, which we always call BPI. And Rhodes will introduce himself, and then also I look forward to hearing his solution.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm Rhodes Yepsen, Executive Director of BPI. We do like to go by our initials. We've been around for 20 years as a nonprofit advocating for compostable products. We're best known for our certification, but we also advocate for those products in composting systems and are working on education around the awareness of those products and what the role is in organics diversion programs. And I'm happy to chat with you all more today about some of those issues and solutions. My solution for the introduction today is something that we've been thinking about a lot, and I think for us really catalyzes a lot of the things that we see as issues, and you know, some of the difficulties in coming up with collaborative solutions, and that is getting to a single set of acceptability criteria that composters, product manufacturers, and brands all agree to. And I think that's a big one. I think there are multiple ways to get to that solution. And I think it's going to include multiple aspects. Some of those we'll talk about today, I'm sure. Things like labeling, a standard for disintegration, and perhaps some other things as well.
Thank you, Rhodes. And I would like to next move to Susan Thoman, who's with Compost Manufacturing Alliance. We call that CMA. Just I'm giving the acronyms because everyone throws out acronyms. IFSC is Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. CSTF is Chicago Sustainability Task Force. We got BPI, and now we got CMA. So take it away, Susan.
Thank you very much for the invite today. And I'm Susan Thoman. I'm the founder and one of 7 partners in the Compost Manufacturing Alliance. We're composter owned and operated. And our primary focus is to do field disintegration testing on compostable products. and work with the supply chain and compost manufacturers to also provide advice and do projects that might move the needle forward a little bit more on the value of working compostables into a system. From that effort, we published lists of what have been lab certified as well as field certified. Nora mentioned there isn't really an infrastructure all connected across the US taking compostables, where we're like a small infrastructure, if you will, of composters that agree that, we haven't necessarily had, everything disintegrate according to, what, was ideal for that operation. So we're working together to have both components as part of that acceptance standard and to work collaboratively and pragmatically between the supply chain and the solid waste system. So, we're looking for BPI certification, that the ASTM standards are met, but we're also asking for engagement with the actual facilities, and we're trying to cull the many, many years of pioneering experience of all of our members and partners in CMA and try and make that, available to the engagement with the supply chain. So we thank you for being here. And my solution, I've worked for years here in the greater Seattle area behind the scenes doing government affairs and business development, stakeholder engagement. And I just think what you're doing today is a big part of what you have to keep doing. Find the common goals, go for the wins, and understand and appreciate everyone's perspective. So, because I don't know how you advance without that in a program that can have a lot of complexities, but also have a lot of rewards if you have the energy moving in the direction where you're working together and being mutually supportive. So that's what I would add. And again, I'm really privileged to be here, and I commend your efforts today.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's definitely a team sport, as you said. So on the packaging side, we've got Jamie Brown from Eco Products. If you could unmute yourself and share a little bit about your vast experience as well as your solution, please.
Hi, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of this discussion. So I am Jamie Brown. I work for Eco Products. I'm a Midwest girl through and through. I'm from Iowa originally, based out of Minneapolis. The bulk of my background has been in solid waste and recycling, working for private hauling firms here in the Twin Cities, focusing primarily on commercial collection. And from 2008 to 2015, I kind of was able to spark my passion for the industry as a whole and delve into organics recycling in partnership with a MRF. That's another acronym that so it's a nonprofit recycling facility here based in the Twin Cities called Eureka Recycling. So in partnership with them, I was the hauling behind the scenes component of those programs. So managing all the operations, education, sales of the program to commercial users ranging from large hotels, restaurants, commercial buildings, and event venues. So I joined Eco Products is a manufacturer of compostable products. I like to think that we're we're a B Corp. So we're one of the manufacturers I feel that's really walking our walk and really striving towards not just selling the cup, but making sure that the cup makes it through to the compost facility and closing the loop on those systems. And I joined the team in 2019 as an operator specialist. This is kind of a unique new team for Eco Products. I liken us to like a special forces unit of sorts, because each one of us, and I think a few team members are joining this conversation, so hi guys. Each one of us has a background as either a compost hauler or a composter themselves. So we're really bringing a unique perspective that allows us to we understand the challenges that are out there, and we can really approach solutions from that standpoint of relieving the burden from the composters and haulers and joining forces to close the loop. And my colleague Wayne likes to call us, we're from the pile. So we're all from the compost pile. So we get it, and we just want to bring clean streams of material, make the business model work for everybody. So my solution kind of segues into that, because I feel like the creation of this role is really an extension of some of the solutions that we're providing, and it's a little bit in alignment with what Susan said, because I think that we all need to be open-minded and creative, and we have a lot of great solutions available now. We just need to unite. And that's really what we're doing with this role within our company, is getting out there and educating the clients, facilitating those connections, closing the loop, and advocating for more compost infrastructure. So that's my solution in a nutshell, and I look forward to expanding on that throughout the conversation.
Thank you, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
It is good. I think, anyone who's had experience on both sides of the desk, or, whatever type of relationship you're talking about, better understands. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that you excel in your role. So Patrick, we saved the best for last, right? Patrick Geraty is with St. Louis Composting. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, but what was meaningful meeting him here over the phone really so far is that, you don't have to be new in the business to take on new innovative approaches to things. And I'm looking forward to Patrick explaining a little bit about himself and solutions that you think would be successful in this realm.
Thanks. Glad to be here. So yeah, I'm the owner president of St. Louis Composting. I also own Kansas City Composting. We've got 10 facilities, 8 of which are in the two in the Kansas City market, 8 are in the St. Louis market. Of the 8 in the St. Louis market, 4 handle food waste. 2 of those are transfer operations that are transferring to 2 of my larger facilities that are permitted to handle food waste. We started handling food waste probably 10 years ago, maybe 12. And that morphed into us actually starting a collection company about 7 years ago called Total Organics Recycling. Currently, we're handling about 500 tons of food waste a week. That's coming in from other haulers that bring material to us, and then what we are picking up ourselves with through our own collection routes. Primarily restaurants, grocery stores, Busch Stadium where the Cardinals play, a lot of corporate headquarters, Edward Jones, Nestle Purina, so forth. So in a nutshell, that's who we are. I guess obviously my solution, at least at the moment, is obviously with food waste comes contamination, and at least for the short term anyway, for my facilities, our solution is we're using equipment on the back side of the compost process to separate out the contamination.
Thank you, Patrick. I feel like there's a lot of questions that in our April meeting where we had a hauler and a composter present, every question was directed at them almost, because nobody really understands the process. You are chefs behind the scenes making magic recipes, and we all want to get our ingredients in your recipe more or less. But so I guess I would say, you explained that you accept food scraps, but why? What is the upside to the challenge, if you can touch on that?
So here in the St. Louis market for us, we pretty much maxed out on the yard waste that we felt we were gonna get each year, give or take a few percentage. So we obviously saw food waste is a huge opportunity. I think Missouri landfilled somewhere near 9 million tons of trash in 2018. Of that, 40 some odd percent could potentially go to a compost facility for composting. So obviously we see the big the potential and the opportunity, and that's what steered us down the line of food waste.
Okay, and then kind of not really a follow-up question, but when it comes to compostable products, what do you see as ways in which the manufacturers of the products could best support composters to make, not only to accept it, but to make it work? What might they be able to bring or provide in your opinion?
Well, that might be a better question for Susan than myself. As far as, myself coming from the compost end, I mean, what we want to see is that if it says it's compostable, that it truly composts and will break down in a compost facility. And we're obviously, in full disclosure, we're part of CMA, and for us to accept compostables at our compost facilities, they have to be CMA approved.
Gotcha. Well, it's that. Thank you for that segue. You made my job easy. Then Susan, if you want to also, and let me stop and mention that the questions I'm asking largely came from the questions that were submitted with the 150 or so people who registered for this. So I just want to let you know that this is a very democratic situation here. So Susan, what is your perspective on what the manufacturers can do to ensure their materials are accepted and processed properly?
Well, I am not a facility operator, but I work with a lot now, and I worked with one for many years out here in Seattle as we slowly introduced food scraps and saw the contamination that came along with it. So, where I'm at today and what I see, and I also heard a lot of yelling from the CFO's office when they figured out they were $3 a ton in the hole because of the contamination in a given month. So, so I always take the perspective, how do you add value to a composter's program? Where is that mutual benefit? So I would say, my experience so far is a lot of your contamination is film plastic. And I also know that in my experience, most composters will accept packaging, if it ideally brings in food. So, if you think about it, inbound tonnage is, a revenue stream. And if there's food in it, that's tonnage. And if it's just a bunch of empty packages, there's no tonnage and really not a lot of value. So I would say areas consumers could benefit a composter. If film plastic is the #1 contaminant and you do use, the kitchen bags in your residential program or commercial collection program, that'll net out if they're certified in the lab and certified in the field. That'll net out a lot of plastic film. So that could be a solution to a problem while it also brings in more food waste. The other thing that we've seen commercially is just BMP encouragement. I always say composting's a privilege, not a right. And a lot of these composters have put a lot of money into these systems, and it gets more expensive every year. So if we really want to, grow these programs and make it a mutual benefit, things like one bin systems where you don't mix compostables and recyclables in a dine-in service, so you have one bin and you don't have cross-contamination. Those are areas where consumers or groups can work for the BMPs we need upstream to make sure it's not Patrick's problem down the road. I guess the last thing is, containers with food in it are ideal, but a bunch of empty cups and bottles, and they're not, really bringing in a lot of value. So I think the intent for composters to take compostables was all about, providing us a comprehensive acceptance program for materials that would be incorporated in those. But I think if you can help solve their problems and bring, more food in, you're still hitting your zero waste targets, but you're doing it thoughtfully with the facility, with the receiving facility in mind.
Thank you. Thank you. It's interesting, if only we could pick and choose. Give me the plates with the food on it, but don't give me the cups without beer. Because what are
Right,
you
and if it's a one bin system, that's a moot point both ways. So that's just a great example of how complex it is.
Right, right. It makes me want to ask a question to Nora, because we're talking about which, Susan's kind of specified what consumer uses or, basically generator uses of compostables are the most beneficial to the composter. Obviously it's that which is bringing the nutrients, but what considerations, Nora, do you think should be taken into account when designing compostable packaging so that it will break down?
Wow. Well, I think if you don't mind, I may punt that to Rhodes in terms of what needs to be designed into the product, because that's much more of, in my mind at least, a resin, polymer, the various polymer type things. But I think in general, from the standpoint of the consumer, we've got to get to a point where it's consistently compostable. So one of the challenges, and this came up, I know Susan was involved in this task force in Washington State a few years ago, where they brought a bunch of different stakeholders together to try to figure out how to deal with contamination. And one of the things that was brought up is you have, let's just pretend, I'm not giving you the exact examples, but you've got King County and Snohomish County and right next to it. You know what, I'm going to back out. I don't know if Snohomish is next to King, but let's just take King County and another county near it. And they, in their commercial, like where they work, or the Whole Foods they go to, or whatever coffee shop they go to, it's pretty uniform what is compostable and not. At their home programs where they do have curbside residential collection, some communities allow them, some communities don't. There's not a lot of consistency. So one of the things I think regionally, or at least like, let's use Chicagoland as an example, is to try to get programs all use, if they're going to be taking them, be consistent right from the start. And then with the products themselves, and we mentioned this up front, is the labeling. They've just got to be, there's got to be a way so that the operator at the facility can immediately see that there's something in there that isn't labeled, it's not what they take because it doesn't have the label, it's very visual. Then that's really a worthwhile design factor. So, but if there's any other elements of that question, I would defer to Rhodes or Sue. Yeah.
Well, Rhodes, so, the question was asked about the design for compostability of the packaging itself, and then Nora brought up the labeling. So feel free to answer the first question and then speak to the second question.
Sure. So the design of the item and the connection to food waste, I couldn't agree more. So BPI, quite a few years ago, stopped certifying items that aren't associated with food waste or yard trimmings. And that was partly, through discussions with composters who were frustrated seeing compostable household items come in that really had no connection. That said, this question of, as there are more zero waste events and people are hopefully eating their food as much as possible, and you have a large volume of packaging coming in from something like a conference center or a stadium, this has been a question that has been discussed for a while. And, I think there needs to be more research on it. We did do some work with CMA on that a few years ago, trying to start to carve away at that question of, what is the value of the compostable product itself, besides the main aspect of bringing in more food, which we know is the purpose. But, in the event that you're getting a truckload of items that are primarily food service products, is there any value to the process in terms of the structure to the pile, the bulk density, does it mess up carbon to nitrogen ratios, things like that? I'll post in the comments section the study. And so, I think it was a great study. I think we need to do more, that's the nature of research. But, and I think the next round we want to look at, how much humus generation does it, account for, rather than just sort of the, other factors of running a composting facility. So I think that for sure is a huge one. You know, there are a lot of questions about how do you make the product itself more valuable. You know, could you put nutrients in the cup? You know, could you put biochar in the bioplastics? So there definitely are a lot of discussions around that. But I think, you know, the core thing to keep focused on is the connection of those items to food waste and to, you know, helping facilitate those diversion programs. The labeling one, you know, I mean, that's part of it, right? That's part of the design of the item. You can't really just stop with the design of the product. And I think that, you know, this kind of links to another question, you know, later in the agenda that maybe I'll just kind of link to that now, if that's okay, is really around this education component, because, you know, that Nora touched on. And I think that it is so challenging to have good education to get consumers to put the right thing in the right bin, if you don't have proper labeling and if you don't have consistency from one place to another, not, you know, from one state to another even, but just within one community. So Nora used the, you know, Seattle area. I'll use the Bay Area. You know, how many people who work in San Francisco live in San Francisco? A lot of them live across the Bay Area, and there are tons of different acceptability criteria. And so you may have a very different acceptability criteria where you work and where you live or where you go to school. And so that makes it almost impossible, right, to have good education for consumers to do the right thing. It's confusing. And I think one of the biggest efforts that we're undertaking right now around that is around labeling. And so, you know, Washington State, and Susan can talk more about this, has, you know, made a huge effort to pass legislation to require better labeling, which we've been supportive of. And on the heels of that, we are in the final stages of getting out an industry guide to set a standard for labeling by product category, which has been a topic that's been discussed for years, and we're finally pretty close. And so I think that the ease of identification in terms of a consumer, that's really where it comes in, right? They need to know what to do with that item. And if they don't have access, still what to do with it. And I think that as more consumer brands and restaurant chains are looking at compostables, there's, you know, the upside of that. I mean, we've talked a lot about the negatives there. The upside is that there's more potential to get it right? You know, there's a lot more brand power and education to inform consumers about what this end of life option is. So those would be my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And I think you kind of made me think about something that Jamie's mentioned, which is, you know, in relation to the communication around contamination. I obviously, you know, having something labeled and people understanding that label, and who's understanding it, the consumer, okay, the composter, that maybe they need a barcode like Nora suggested. You know, there's a lot of, you know, identification / labeling. You know, we could unpack that into a few different areas, but on the side of consumer education and communication, Jamie, I wonder, you know, given the way you're looking at multiple sides, if you have something to add on, you know, what works best from your opinion. And I know Eco Products can speak to some cool programs you've done. So like a quick example too.
So sure. Well, we call it our system solution. So it's really all about controlling the inputs. First of all, meeting with the procurement team, making sure that everything's 100% compostable where it's possible. And then from there, we've talked about certain pieces of this, Rhodes and so forth, but bin placement, signage, making sure you've got the 3 separate bins, 1 compost, 1 landfill, 1 recycling. And then our products are clearly designed. We've got our green stripe line, so we educate consumers, that's our compostable. Our blue stripe line, which is recycled consumer content. So easy identification for facilities people, easy identification for haulers. When haulers see our products, they can recognize them, and also the BPI labeling and the testing that we do, and then all the way through to the composter. And we've even got composters that take packaging that have, we've created a composter distributor model, so they are actually distributing our products as part of their programs, because they know that that those products not only break down, but we're providing the education on the front end to make sure that they're getting low contamination and clean streams.
And all that stuff is so good. And I'm not saying Eco Products needs to answer this question, but how do you scale that? Because I mean, do I have to buy Eco Products in order to do it?
Yeah.
No, or hire Brightbeat
No.
because we've worked on those types of initiatives too. I mean, it's hand holding. But, you know, I think about the school districts, you know, the second and third largest school districts in the country are represented here right now. I mean, how do you ensure that that material will actually break down? And if there's a breakdown in the communication that's preventing it, you know, that's kind of where this conversation is, you know, rather than the science of it, more so, you know, what's preventing it from working. And you're saying, Jamie, is that you've just been able to connect the dots from procurement to controlling the stream, wherever it may be, to then, you know, having done the field testing and, you know, the certification to ensure that the materials would break down in those specific facilities, correct?
Well, and we do, so we do very rigorous testing. We do, I mean, our basic level would be our products meeting the ASTM manufacturing standards. Then next, we work very closely with BPI to get our products BPI certified. From there, we work with CMA, and I believe, I'm happy to report that most of our products are approved for windrow and like former cedar grove classification, and we're continuously working, well, I would say, let me back up a step, then a step beyond the CMA would be composters. I mean, welcoming composters to test our materials in their applications and working with them to make sure that they're breaking down. And then just continuous research and development in terms of substrates that we use and how can we improve, how can we better utilize our raw materials or find new raw materials that perform better. Does that answer?
It does, and I'd like to go to Patrick and ask, you know, on the processing side, are there best practices to ensure that the compostables will break down and as quickly as you need them to?
So again, if, you know, let's start with the hauling company, I guess, that picks up the material. So if we've got a school district or a university that wants to sign up with us and they're going to use compostables, then they've got to buy a, you know, off of they've got to buy a CMA approved product. We then pick up, and we pick up in two different ways. We pick up in a box truck, or we pick up in modified rendering trucks. If you are a new restaurant, for example, and we don't have confidence in you yet that you're going to get it right, we're going to pick you up with a box truck so that we can look in that container, provided we don't see anything that is, you know, any contamination, then that container will go to the compost facility. If it comes, if we look at it and there's material that doesn't have the logo on it, or beer bottles or anything along those lines, then that container is landfilled. We have a very low threshold for contamination. And you know, again, when you're dealing with, you know, a whole rendering truck dumping of 20 tons of food waste, you don't have the luxury of walking through that pile of food waste and picking out little bits and pieces of material that you don't think is compostable. So again, we deal with that on the back end with density separators and so forth when we're finished, when the compost is finished and we're going through the screening process. So
Yeah,
not 100% sure I answered your question, but.
Well, you definitely answered it on the hauler side. And I think that being able to be dynamic in operations is key. It reminds me actually, so on the hauling side, but it reminds me on the composting side, and just having heard secondhand that, you know, there's facilities that manage their organics that might be yard waste, that might be manure and pure food in certain windrows, and then other ones are set aside, and that's where the food service ware is being managed, so that, you know, just like you bring a box truck instead of bringing your route truck, you know, is it possible that you get that anything that makes you go and then you put that over there? Like, is that something that is your facility the size where you can have that option?
We are the size that we'd have that option. But in order to do that, again, you know, that food waste and compostables is coming in the same load. So the facilities that I'm aware that are doing what you're talking about, where they're separating their food waste out from their compostables, they're doing that through putting that through some type of a depackaging equipment, and they're pulling that the compostables out that way, and then they're putting it in a windrow on their compost facility, and they're going through the compost process. And at the end of the process, obviously, whatever is composted and screens out is screened out. Whatever isn't is shipped to the landfill.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a follow-up and to a clarification point of what I meant would be not to separate that food that's mixed with the compostable serveware. That itself is a stream, a mixed food and serveware stream. But maybe if you're getting a load of manufacturer, or let's say produce that has no packaging in it, I don't want to you know, throw out there different examples, but I'm saying that if there's streams that have food serviceware in them, separate from ones that you feel more reliable
Sure.
about, maybe those are ones. And then you mentioned how you would screen, and then, you know, the leftovers get taken out, and so understanding a little the equipment that you use, and this is kind of, you know, I'm asking the question to share a best practice with others on the call, you know, what type of equipment you use that allows you to take serveware. And my question is, you know, does it allow you through the process to keep that compostable serveware, not the polystyrene and the other stuff? Does it allow you to keep that in the process, or be put back into the process?
Sure, and we do have loads that come in both ways. We have loads that come in that are just, you know, coming out of a produce house or something along those lines, where it's a very clean stream of food waste, and that will be mixed with yard waste and composted. It might be composted on one side of the site or in one section of the site. Material that's coming in that has compostables on it, higher risk of contamination is that area is kind of isolated on another part of the site.
And Stephanie, if I could just add to this conversation, there's a few situations where composters who make a certified organic compost will separate out loads coming in with compostable products in them and compost that separately, and then keep them out of the piles that are going to be certified organic. It's just one way that composters have been able to resolve, in this case, the organic certification.
Right.
Yeah, and thank you. And that makes me, you know, kind of wonder when we talk about what are opportunities to improve this current situation, you know, is there, you know, I'm going to open this question up to all of you. You know, what is the future for composters with the influx of compostable plastics that we anticipate, you know, from the universities when they're back open, you know, food service operators, corporations whose cafeterias have exclusively this type of material, and so on. I mean, and let me say, until they get to the point to understand they should be using reusables. For this influx that we're anticipating, what is you know, what does that mean for composters? Is it coming anyway, and what are we doing about it?
There are a couple other composters on the call that you might want to call out. I know Jake from SET is with us, and Luke from Better Earth Logistics. They might want to chime in on this. Oh.
Okay, now I'm here. If they pop their video on, I will be able to see them. I can't see them now, but I would welcome hearing from Luke or SET gentleman? There's Jake from SET. If you want to address that question, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
Right. Well, I was kind of hoping to pick up some information from you guys on that and find out the answers. But frankly, it's just a matter of, like Pat was saying, do we separate the material as it's coming into us, have different streams of pure food waste, pure yard waste, commingled food waste and food packaging? That seems to be a good method of controlling the potential for contamination. And as has been mentioned before, it's really not the compostable packaging that's the issue. It's all of the lookalikes that come along with it. So, there's a simple solution in theory, which is to have a food waste or a food packaging be only compostable and not have the issue of lookalikes. That's probably one of the hardest to actually put into practice, but it would eliminate all of the potential contamination that we're seeing. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the answer. I was hoping to learn the answers here.
No, well, thank you for your input. And it's true. I mean, controlling a stream is a challenge. I mean, there's what I always say when it comes to events, and it is, admittedly what I focus on and know the most about. But, if there's a security line, you're not getting in with your flask of vodka or your non-compostable cup. Though I don't know why Starbucks, for future reference, if you want to sneak something into an event, put it in a Starbucks cup, because those always seem to end up, but rarely. So, how are we controlling streams? And in zero waste events, there's a pretty good job of it. But I think that, when we're talking scalable solutions in a school, we're not preventing people, they're not getting checked at the door and not allowed to bring it in. So I think that, yeah, the kind of mass uses are what we're talking about. And Melissa, if you want to chime in, I know we were lucky to partner together. Melissa worked on Farm Aid this past 2019, and I wrote a piece on it for BioCycle, and first of all, Farm Aid is just a beautiful organization and everyone involved is amazing, but Live Nation took huge steps. They have the past several years, but took huge steps to make it as close as possible to zero waste. And Melissa's company, which is located in Milwaukee, not so far from Wisconsin where the event was held, did amazing jobs to remove contamination. So that is a closed event, but at the same time, people are buying plastic containers and things, sneaking in their flasks. And so there was Melissa taking them out. So I needed to give you that kudos, but I would love to hear you speak to the point of how composters are going to handle an influx of compostable serveware moving on.
Thanks, Steph. That was a great event. I think part of it is, right, there's the technology on contamination. Contamination is inevitable in some ways, shape, and form. I think what it really truly boils down to is the end product. Composters are so diligent with contamination because they have to sell the end product to make it viable. And so I think, and especially with compostable materials, once you incorporate compostable products, you lose your organic certification. And so once you lose that organic certification, composters are no longer able to sell their high quality compost at a premium dollar. And it's already a very price competitive market for our new industry, especially states that do not already have this industry established. And so I think for me, part of it is really developing the end market more. I think DOT projects, non-edibles, things specific to stormwater retention, I think all of those are appropriate outlets for compost that may have some cross-contamination in it, whether it is compostable products that are not breaking down fully, whether it might be some plastic film, and where I don't think the industry necessarily knows is what quality of compost is appropriate for these various applications, and what is that price point that composters could sell that material for. I know for a fact composters would be more willing to accept dirty loads, so to speak, if they knew they had an outlet for that finished product. And that's where they get scared, is that they're going to get stuck with a bunch of material that they can't sell. And they're not making enough to process it. You know, unless you are both the hauler and the processor, I don't think you're able, as a composter, you're really depending on that finished product. And as a hauler, you're really depending on someone to take those raw materials, and everybody wants to divert compostable products from a restaurant, especially nowadays with what's going on, to special events and to sustainability, all of this. I mean, they're harping on it. And as more and more municipalities are trying to ban single-use plastic, compostable products are really truly the only option that is going to be as convenient for them if they're not willing to do reusable. But that's my limited 2 cents on it. We haven't been able to do full-scale composting yet, but we're trying to position ourselves to open up a larger scale compost site, because the composter we were working with is no longer willing to accept compostable materials because he can't sell the product for what he wants to. The finished product, the finished compost.
Thank you, Melissa. That was informative, and it kind of speaks to, again, what's the pain points on the processor end. So that I want to bring a question to Susan, who, when we talk about profitability on the composter side, what would add profitability to the compost manufacturers? This, again, was a question that was asked from someone who registered.
Well, I guess you could just buy all the compost the composter makes, then they'll be great. But that was my first answer. Well, I always said, having done a lot of business facilitation over the years, 3 things lead to profitability. 1, you either reduce someone's cost, you help them avoid an impending cost, or you bring them revenue. So if you think about compostables and food scraps, cost reductions, much like what I said, is there a suite of products that we know work and, across different facilities that solves a problem or cuts contamination in a pile? So if there are film plastic contaminants, is there a way to strategize together on what are the primary sources of those? For instance, it might be a concert of things. We had a plastic bag ban here in Seattle that netted 50% of film plastics out of the solid waste system. So maybe you have legislation to net out plastic bags for reusables, but you also push, the labeling legislation and the color marking in the stores on compostables. But you also, you're solving a problem that reduces a cost for, like, Patrick or another facility. So I would always start at the pile and ask yourself, what's in the pile we don't want? And is there a solution through a compostable that would reduce costs to ship that to the landfill? Another example is cost avoidance. COVID's given us all an opportunity to shift to we don't know where. I had clients telling me in the last couple weeks, the changes in what people are buying for food service because it's all takeout now. So without the revenues from some of those restaurants, I think they're cutting costs by buying a lot of the cheaper stuff that we've worked really hard to get out of the system. So, what's timely today that we should talk about in terms of cost avoidance? Is there something coming up regulations wise? Is this going to be a hardship on composters we don't even see coming, because a lot of residential packaging isn't intended for composting right now? And then revenue enhancement, that's how you change profitability. Is there a case you could make if you had all the BMPs in place, a 1-bin system, lots of food waste, recovery opportunities, the right bags, the right signs, the right systems? If you really did a good job on the BMP that earns the right to go to composting, will that bring in a significant revenue to that facility and improve their business? So I always like to think in those 3 terms. If they're not reducing costs, they're not avoiding future costs, and they're not adding revenue, what is the benefit the composter is going to get? And speak their language. You know, they're really busy making compost in my experience, and they have a lot of stuff going on, and it's seasonal. So, you know, we really do try to be the liaison to helping the composter and the, you know, the end user, you know, come together and do the right thing. And I guess the other thing I would say is, you know, a lot of what composters don't have is time. You know, sitting on a webinar or going through a list of what's compostable and figuring it out. That's one of the calls, you know, we get more than anything is we don't really know what to do. We don't know where to start. So how can we, you know, save time? How can, a lot of my education in this came from people like Jamie, who spent days in the field with me explaining how it works in the supply chain, you know, folks like Jamie that are out there in the field working with end users. So again, that collaborative spirit of how do we build a model that brings value both ways is just, I just want to keep promoting that that's really the way you're going to grow these programs in a healthy way, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think like my mind is going in two places right now because, you know, number one, like I never shared my idea. I'm just going to tell you guys quickly right now because it relates to the Jamies that, you know, if we had an intake or handling agreement between generators and facilities. So if a generator could commit to providing a controlled stream and outside containers aren't allowed or they're managed on the generator side, and they could provide verified procurement of certified compostable items, and then the compost hauler and facility agree to the processing of them, then like, doesn't that just sound like it works? And we could even have color-coded bags that we know that they're good to go or they're marked when we know that they're clean. Yep. All that sounds good, but that is, you know, going to be relationship by relationship. That's not as scalable. And, you know, there's somebody organizing that. So it's a sustainability coordinator, a zero waste educator, a consultant, a third party, or, you know, a vendor partner. But so I think that, you know, do we search for those types of solutions and, you know, kind of an all-in-one scalable solution? Or do we, yeah, you know, I mean, I guess maybe that's sort of the pilot concept before an all-in solution works. But, you know, I don't know if anyone has any kind of thoughts on that. And then how do we scale that? I'm going back to that question.
I have one, I think that's what I've been offering to do in Chicago. So let's do case by case scenarios. Let's do like memorandums of understanding, which we did here in Minneapolis with our clients, outlining what you just said, all those parameters, and then just making sure that everyone's communicating. And the other thing I wanted to throw out there, and I hope I'm not changing the subject for you, but how do we organize a buyback program that's of larger scale? Because I've been trying to, my team and I have been trying to conceptualize. I mean, we can kind of do it on a smaller scale where we say, hey, okay, we have Shed Aquarium, for example, and they agree to buy back, you know, X amount of compost from you as part of this agreement. But how do we scale that on a even larger scale to help with the end market development?
Well, you did change the subject.
I'm sorry.
I value the discussion on end market, and I kind of want to come back to it. If Yvonne is to talk right now, Yvonne had something to say that kind of is on the point of what we're discussing right now. I want to come back to end market. It's valuably important. So Yvonne, feel free.
Hi there. I'm Yvonne with Better Earth Logistics. My husband, he just popped on. He's on the phone. He's actually working our compost site right now. So
I'm actually making compost right now. So sorry if it's a little loud. I've got tractors running.
Yeah, before I hand over to Luke then, I just want to kind of give you a little bit about what we're doing in Peoria. So we are the haulers, and my in-laws own the compost facility, Better Earth Compost in Peoria. And we came in and joined him a few years ago when we realized there was a need for a hauler for food waste. So that's how we started our trucking company a few years ago. And then it's expanded from there when we realized we could actually do more good, offering a service to schools and residents and businesses that have cafeterias to be able to pick up their food scraps. So we initially just started with food scraps and working in businesses and schools, and we service Central Illinois just now. So we have universities and schools, some cafeterias in different places that are now even using, I just dropped off some compostable products today to one of our customers who are expanding into the full cycle. So we actually here, we've completely closed the loop right here in Peoria. So rundown is the compost is made here in Peoria, and one of our farmers actually buys the compost from us. They grow the produce, which is then sold at our farmers market and one of our local grocery stores. The customers buy the produce from there, and we have a residential program where we built a kiosk, and residents sign up for a subscription, and we provide them with the bags and a card to the kiosk so they can fill up during the week and drop off their food scraps during the week at the kiosk, which is controlled because it closes and you only get access with a key card. So that is at the local grocery store. So then our customers are able to bring the scraps back, and then we pick it up and take it right back to the compost. We've gone one step further with that, and the grocery store actually sells compostable products that we provide them. And so they're getting compostable products back that come to the kiosk, and they also sell the pre-prep stuff that they do in the grocery store in compostable containers. And they tell their customers, hey, if you don't have a subscription, you can bring the compostable containers back, and they'll go in our bin to be composted. So that's just one way that we've been able to close the loop and work with people to be able to educate them on a face-to-face level, because they're coming in and working with our customers. So that's kind of a little bit of what we do in the hauling side of things. And we're also big on starting with the kindergartners. So when we go into the schools, we educate the little ones, because if you start with the little ones, that's how you're going to change a generation. And you're actually going to have no problems with contamination. And we don't have too much trouble anymore with the customers that we do have that are using the compostable products, because us as the haulers, you know, somebody mentioned that the composters don't have time to go and do all these educations, and that's right. And that's why we stepped in to offer that solution and educate people, and to go in and show them, like walk in, because you're not going to get a one-size-fits-all for a cafeteria or for a school. So education for us is really, really big. And telling them, like, what does BPI mean, and certifications, and why. Everybody wants to know the why. And if you tell a customer this is why it's important, they get on board. And we've had a lot of success just in Central Illinois with doing that. So I don't know, Luke's still there. Are you still there? Is he there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You want to talk about the composting side of things?
Yeah, I can touch on that. So a few things I've heard is that there's contamination issues, and we've had to do a lot of education to prevent that contamination. And we'll still get it. I'll use one customer as a great example. Beacon Insurance decided they wanted to go zero waste. We said, we'll help you. I said, the best way this is going to work is if you actually have all compostable items. So our motto is, if it's not reusable, it needs to be compostable if it touches food or liquid and you're planning on disposing it. By doing that, by saying that, they committed to it. They said, okay, we're going to source all compostable. So I know Jamie talked about doing a partnership with composters, so that way they can sell and distribute compostable materials. That works if the composter is actually on board with it from the start. So we have several customers that have started on the compostable items that we weren't even thinking about distributing at that time. So it's been a little bit of a process to be like, okay, well, now where do we go? So making sure that plan and talking to the right people at the right time definitely can help. So what Beacon Insurance did is they did that education inside on the side of the front of the house. They made sure for the first 3 weeks they pulled stuff out and went through it. Where's our problems? Okay. And then 3 weeks later, they said, okay, we think we've got all the problems fixed. We're ready to start. Aside from the occasional water bottle, or maybe the occasional guy that brought his lunch and forgot that the green bin means compost, we don't get contamination. So I would say we maybe have a 2 to 3% contamination problem, and that's a year average. I'll throw out there to try and be generous, to not try and give false hope. But a lot of the contamination from our big customers comes when a company like Caterpillar gets a new contract with a new custodial staff, and they don't understand that the green bags need to go in ours, or they need to use the green bags for composting only, and they need to make sure that they don't put, it goes from severe contamination, which our drivers are trained. You look and see what's in the bin before you tip it, and they leave the bin, and then we get a hold of our customer and say, hey, this bin needs to be cleaned out. This is what we found. If it gets to our facility and we find it, we do the gross job of going in and getting it and pulling it out. And again, we're not going to get anything or all of it. The gentleman from St. Louis Composting, like you said, you've got to catch the contamination on the back half. That's the only way to have success at it, to be able to sell a quality product. To the point of certified composting, here at Better, we didn't even try to get that because we know better. We would have to do so much separating that it would be more detrimental to our operation of trying to keep up with it. So we decided, you know what, we're going to make the best quality compost we can, and if we're not certified, well, hopefully our customers will understand. But we operate on a 20-acre facility, and we're at about 60% capacity right now. So when you talk about a large influx of compostable items, I say bring it on. We've got enough nitrogen, we've got enough carbon, and that's the biggest thing, is making sure as the composter that you have enough material of all different types. The EPA does make it a little tricky when you want to sit there and be like, hey, I want to hold on to this product for a little while and mix it in when I get this other product in. But we went and we've had some meetings, and we've worked out a really good relationship with the EPA to make sure that, hey, this is how it works really good for us to make good compost so we can sell it, so we don't have a volume problem of, I can take all the material in, but if I can't get rid of it, then I turn it into a landfill. And that's, we plan on being here. My kids want this facility, they're going to get it. And generation after generation, without a landfill where we cap it and move on to the next 60 acres to, make another problem. We can be here for hundreds of years because we can handle the volume, because we get rid of it so much. We just had 5 semi-loads go out today of compost and, different blends. So we can move the product, and it's taken a couple decades to build a industry, but the need is out there. And a lot of times people are like, oh, you're the closest thing in 50 miles, because we're down here in central Illinois. So I'm going to shut up. If you guys got any questions past that, feel free to ask.
Stephanie, could I quickly jump in on that? This is Nora. So in the beginning,
Are you going to ask Luke a question?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Luke, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, because Nora, if you're not asking Luke a question, I want to ask Luke a question. But if
well, it's something Luke just said that I'd like to throw open, because it's what I said in the beginning, and it's come up a couple of times. And Luke, I'd be curious, and really others on the call, there's some great discussion going on in the chat, is this is a sensitive subject, so hear me out here. But there's this attitude's not the right word, but I can't think of what is, that you have to be diverting food waste to divert compostable products. And there's a couple things with that. And that's why I said in the beginning, as there's more demand for infrastructure for compostable packaging and food serviceware related to what food either comes in or is served in, there's just not a lot of food waste composting infrastructure out there. So Luke, you just said you've got a lot of nitrogen materials. You got manure. Other places have biosolids. So I think to a certain extent we have to uncouple the two, even though that's the most obvious stream to divert it through. And so there was one post on the chat from a woman named Jean, I think, and this kind of gets to that, I believe, to what Jean was asking. And Luke, so I don't know what Stephanie's question is, but if you want to add a little more to that in the context of, you have events where people are eating the food they buy and they spend a lot of money on it. So what you're ending up with is the bowl that the food came in, or the beer cup, because they spent $10 on the beer, but they don't want to keep the cup. So those are realities, and I think they need to be addressed.
Well, and to that point, like you mentioned events, we had one event where we actually didn't capture the front side of it because there wasn't enough education. But it was a turkey festival, and they cooked up 1,600 turkey carcasses. Well, we're a commercial facility that can take meat products. So all those 1,600 turkey carcasses that have been going to the landfill since this event went on, for the last 2 years, it's all been compost. So just you got to find those little spots. And we said, so when you guys ready to move it to the front side? And they're like, and it's very hard to get this certain event to change anything. And they said, you know what? We actually might be interested in doing that. Let's sit there and talk. And then, of course, I'll insert COVID happened, and then where everything went from there.
Well, my question was a bit less exciting and more technical. I just wondered how long you're seeing it take for your food serviceware to break down in your facility.
Because I knew this conversation was coming today, yesterday I was adding water to our rows, so I got to go about a whopping half mile an hour down the row while I was adding water to it. And I got to take a really good look on the outside of our windrows. Even rows that are, only a month old, we're seeing plastic, but the plastic we're seeing isn't compostable plastic. We're seeing the plastic that comes in our yard waste. Like I said, our food waste stream from a contamination side is very minimal. And a lot of that comes down to we jumped on the BPI bandwagon, and I'm so thankful we did, because every customer that wants to do something, I say, is it BPI certified? Oh, no, well, then we don't take it. And then so they go out and they find it. And that makes it very easy for us to know, I know all the major brands because I see them in our containers. And I'll even reach out to our end product when we're screening it, when it's about it's probably been sitting on our facility for maybe 8 months to a year, depending on when we get to screening it. We go through that overs, we'll hand through it just to see what we've got. We don't find the compostable cups. We don't find compostable forks. They're all broken down. Now, what I will find, and this is one thing, I've heard the different compostable companies that are on here, distributors, I find, and I'm not saying that they're the ones causing this problem, but their competitors are, and they will sell bio bags. Well, bio bags aren't compostable, from the biodegradable standpoint. Because I have customers be like, well, it says it's biodegradable. I'm like, well, if they knew the definition of the word, they'd understand that that's not biodegradable. And if it's not compostable, we can't use it. So we've got a vacuum on our screener that pulls out a lot of our plastic. And I reached in there and grabbed a bag that was green. I was like, oh, no, we're getting compostable bags through here. It wasn't. It was a biodegradable bagger. And I know exactly which customer it came from, and I know exactly when they used it. This was a year old, and I could have rinsed off this biodegradable bag and handed it right back to them to use it. So one thing I will say for a solution to be able to help composters out is the distributors of compostable items, they do a great job of having good products that are comparable. Where it starts getting muddy in the water is you've got big companies like US Food, Cisco, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but they're the big corporations that sell to the food service industry. They can't sit there and say, well, here's your compostable cup and your compostable lid and your compostable plate, but can't find a compostable lid for that plate, so here's a recyclable lid. And they just sell stuff, just say, oh, it's eco-friendly. And now I've got a plastic lid that's coming into my waste stream that's not compostable. So if we really want to help the composters out, we've got to make sure that when customers are asking these big distributors, hey, I want a compostable option, that they're in fact selling just compostable. Like I said, Pekin Insurance, they only bought compostable items for their kitchen, down to the sticker. And that's how much they cared about it. And we don't have a waste problem. So I hope I answered the first question, then I went on a little bit of a tangent, sorry.
It's okay. No, thank you very much. We appreciate you sharing your perspective as you walk the row, you know, so it's good. It's good. I've been talking on mute. I'm sorry. I thanked you, Luke. And my question is, does anyone else have any questions or comments on that topic before I have kind of a wraparound question for all panelists, seeing as we're getting, you know, final 25 minutes?
I guess I have, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I guess I just had one real quick question, something that we've been considering for that exact same reason of, you know, imposter products getting into the stream is only not having people, not having organizations go through a supplier, having them go directly through us, so that we know if an organization is buying weekly 50,000 cups or something along those lines. It gives us an idea of the volume of potential compostable products we will have to process. It also, if they stop purchasing 50,000 cups every single month, then we know, well, something's up with this. Where else are they going that they might be switching products out? And then even maybe putting a logo on the products that we distribute and only accepting the material that we distribute. I don't know, it's a pipe dream. Like, I don't know how tough it would be to implement, but I think it would be a great revenue source for us. It would help us control our stream, and it would really truly give us an idea of the quantity of compostable products that we're processing, as well as the different divisions that are purchasing them the most. Is it really just special events and you're just got this one big unload on the special day, or is it corporations that are really utilizing it? Is it schools? Like, where are these needs? And I think that really controlling that stream a little bit more as the composter or the hauler even might even be another really good fit if the hauler is the distributor, because the hauler, in my opinion, is the one that's checking for contamination at the site, or should be checking for contamination at the site and identifying problem locations, you know, hopefully before it gets to the site. So just my 2 cents, and just wondering if anybody else has ever thought of that, and if it's a pipe dream.
Yeah, I know
This is Luke, and we have tried that. We've thought of that. I've always been afraid of making a customer feel like it's us or nobody else, because we are the only ones that will offer the hauling service. And I've never wanted to pin them in the corner, but there's been a couple customers where I've told them if they didn't get it under control that we would be stopping service, or they would have to source directly through us because of the severity of the contamination. So I think you're in the right ballpark of thinking that through.
And Nora could probably share with you, Melissa, Ag Recycle. Carla, is that right? I mean, I feel like there's examples across the country of others that are doing what you've just described. So it's not a pipe dream. Maybe you could speak to other peers, yeah, and make it reality. So I wanted to say that. Someone else sounded like they were going to speak up. Was that you, Benjamin?
Yeah, it was me. I just wanted to say, what do you think about the role of the larger or largest of the haulers? So here we have people who are, I guess, intermediate size, and they're smaller, I guess, on the call as well. The national names, there's an incentive by the people who have spoken up, Luke and Melissa, Patrick. You're incentivized to do the right job because you understand the product on the receiving end. But there are plenty of national named or just large local haulers who don't necessarily have to contend with the contamination on the far end. Is there a strategy that we can employ to try and get them on board? You know, they're focused on route density. They may be taking materials from restaurants that are buying the right products, as well as restaurants that are not buying BPI certified. Any thought about that?
Not to jump in real quick, but I got an extra hand. This is Luke. One thing my dad established at the compost facility for those big haulers is, look, if we identify that your truck brings in contamination that's severe enough that we have to do something about it, you're paying $1,000 debris removal. He has hit one company specifically, and it was from the same customer every time, because they were the first ones to start this. In 1 year, they paid $6,000 for fines. The sad thing is that ended up causing that company to stop composting with us, or at least stop wanting to or have the service. So the hauler was like, yeah, they canceled it. We're not going to bring it out anymore. 5 years later, they came back and they actually went to me directly and said, hey, we heard you're solid. What we found is when we came in and educated, that helped. So to your point, yeah, the larger haulers, we've had trouble getting them to buy in on the education piece. And in fact, Waste Management hires us now instead of running their own truck. They just contract us out to take care of their customers.
All right. Thank you again, Luke. And I'm going to ask you all a question that relates to the solutions that were proposed, kind of early on in the conversation. If we're talking about, and I'm going to, remind us of what Rhodes suggested, a single set of acceptability criteria that composters, product manufacturers, and brands all agree to. This goes for labeling, standard for disintegration, et cetera. If we could come up with that criteria, which that is a point of discussion, but my next question is, how do we get the communication and agreement between those parties to manage the material as we want it to be, essentially to not screen out the material, but if it's, able to be then processed properly, because we've come up with this set of agreed upon initiatives or acceptability points. How do we get there? And I'm asking my panelists if nobody else. So maybe Patrick, could I start with you by asking you, kind of what you think it would take to have that criteria that would be a little more uniform?
I think it's, a great thing to strive for. And certainly having that criteria, but with that is going to come a tremendous amount of education to the general public and everybody else, whether it's a business or a residential collection or a restaurant. You think of the turnover in a restaurant or the grocery store, it's going to be constant retraining. For those of you that went to go to USCC's conference, for example, where we have out compost bins, composters can't always get it right. So it's going to take a tremendous amount of education. And I think that, from my standpoint, to be able to come up with a common language and go through the education is great. And it would be lovely to see. But in the end, I'll bet you I still have contamination, just because not everybody's always going to do the right thing. You're going to some people are just going to throw material in the closest bin that's there. Unfortunately, I feel that's just the way it is. Not to say we can't strive to do better, but I think if you're a compost facility, let's leave food waste out of it for a minute. You take a compost facility with accepting yard waste. I can't tell you how many tennis shoes I get. Because why, I don't know. Golf balls, people that put out their paper, we only accept yard waste in paper bags. We have people that duct tape their paper bags closed. It's going to take education. It's going to take time. Maybe it's going to take legislation, but I think we can get better, but I think there's always going to be a percentage of contamination.
I'll jump in since it was my solution. I appreciate that, Patrick. And I think that, I think earlier there was this discussion of like, how do you scale some of these problems? And like, we were talking a lot about venues, and the ability to have more of a controlled system and education there versus perhaps a municipal approach, and thinking about cities like Minneapolis and, the organics that Jake's facility takes, and the great effort that Minneapolis has done to be able to have a really low contamination rate, even in their residential stream. And I think that it for sure there's no silver bullet. And I think that, where my head was at with that is, I think that there are multiple things that are going to need to be done through, whether that's better labeling, and better education programs, and perhaps legislation, like California is working on, where they're not just working on the access problem with 1383, requiring communities to offer organic waste collection, or as Nora pointed out in the comments, also has a buyback clause for the finished compost. They also have single-use packaging laws, but unfortunately, there are so many other tensions that we've highlighted on today and sometimes danced around that make it really difficult to align those, right? In California is a good example, where the things are not lining up. There are multiple definitions of compostability. The organic waste definition that they're trying to get out due to climate change emissions, the curbside programs doesn't include compostable products, which is going to leave us with the similar situation that we're in today, where every community is doing their own thing, which from the contamination side makes it pretty near impossible, to Patrick's point. So I guess my feeling is, one of the things that we're going to have to do, and that a lot of us on the phone, try to do, is figure out how to be on the same team with those things. Because I think there is a big push to try to solve this, whether that's from the legislative side or from businesses making decisions or municipalities making the commitments to roll out curbside programs. And I think as much as possible, acknowledging that we, will sometimes disagree, trying to be as focused on being on the same team rather than on opposing teams, which is happening right now to a certain degree in California and in other places. And I think that's where we're going to get stuck, right? If we're not visibly on the same team to state legislators, it's a disaster. And we talked a little bit about organic agriculture. BPI has been trying to tackle that one for a few years from different angles. And that's honestly one of the really hard points is it's going to be hard to convince the National Organic Program and the National Organic Standards Board if the composters and the compostable products companies don't agree on a single standard, right? I guess that's where my head was at. And I think that's where the first, it's not one particular thing, but it's perhaps the web that will weave together those initiatives. Because if it's a multiple set of criteria, if it's community by community, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, Patrick, you said how many facilities you have. We're not in the age where it's just, one facility. It's multiple facilities over an area. So that's my answer to my own solution, I guess.
I have a different thought, but I really do want others to kind of chime in on if there is a way to bring that. Okay, I'm just going to say what I'm thinking, because I'm watching on the chat, people are talking about venues. We look at our large scale generators and find that as a solution. Can we flip and look at our large scale processors? And that would be owners like Patrick of multiple facilities. Rebecca, I'm not sure who's talking on chat. I'm not sure where you send all your compostable materials to, but if we looked at Chicago as an example, and if we made sure that the compost facilities in Chicago could take whatever, it could be BPI certified items that were CMA field tested, or however you want to specify it, and then ensure that the facilities just in our region could accommodate, then would we be able to standardize at least within our region? And I'm just thinking that everyone's looking at the large generators, but again, if potentially processors were using similar processes and there were similar climates, like the things that impact the composter process itself, You know, is that an approach? You know, how do we make it composter centric, Patrick?
I guess if I understand what you're proposing, you're talking about in Chicago is for whether it's BPI, CMA, all the compostable suppliers to get together and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to roll this out in Chicago and work with all the composters so that they understand what we're doing and they're willing to accept all these materials.
But actually the opposite, like starting with the compost facilities and understanding, do they have a system that can process this material if it's certified? You know, a testing across, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't feel bad focusing on Chicago because that's where we are, but you know, maybe you've done something like this in St. Louis. Is there any point of reference where multiple facilities in a specific region, you know, did same testing, similar testing, so that a unified solution for material types could be accepted and processed across that region?
So again, I think that, composters are in the business of selling compost. And that's why you've got some that have just said, we're not going to accept this material because we don't want to deal with the additional potential contaminations. I think facilities that are accepting compostables, certainly, or food waste got into it, and just like we did. And after we saw more, accumulations of more and more contamination on site. So I think it's got to be a two approach to approach it from both directions. Certainly have to be on the front end, trying to make sure that everything that's coming into the site is compostable with a minimal amount of contamination. But I think you have to be realistic and understand that you're going to have some type of a density separator on the back end of the system to pull what is coming that ends up in the stream that either was contamination, was plastic that got into the system that shouldn't have got into the system.
Thank you. I'm opening the floor. If somebody wants to speak right now, I'd like to take our conversation to agreed upon solutions in the last, about 15 minutes that we have. But I first wonder if there's other, topics that we haven't touched on. There's some questions that haven't been answered yet. But I wanna open it up to people who are on this call right now who have a question or point to raise. Take yourself off mute.
So just to kind of follow up on one other thing. I mean, obviously, the lion's share of our St. Louis Composting's revenue comes from the sale of our end products. And to have a food waste customer that just can't get it right and constantly is putting contamination into the system is not, that little bit of revenue I get from that customer is not worth jeopardizing the quality of our end products that we produce. So we have a very low threshold for contamination, and we need to protect our end products and the quality of our end products and the revenue that we receive from our end products.
That's why we're all here. We're all here for the soil. So I fully respect and appreciate you saying that.
Hey, Stephanie, this is Walter. I've got a question for Rhodes regarding OMRI. I think you spoke to our Food Scrap Coalition a couple of years ago, and I thought you had said that there were discussions with OMRI to maybe have them soften their synthetic rule and not create the scenario where these compost sites have to have multiple windrows, which obviously Peoria doesn't want to do that. So I'm just curious if OMRI is moving at all on their standards.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So technically it's the National Organic Programs, OMRI, or other local certifiers or regional certifiers don't set those rules. They sometimes come out with guidance documents. So if you scroll way up in the chat to one of the earlier questions about that, paper products. You know, we have talked to Omri and other organic certifiers like CDFA about their rules and their interpretation of what's on the USDA national approved list of synthetic substances. You know, wondering how things like paper yard waste bags got you know, sort of on the accepted list for a certifier like Omri, how that links back to something like recycled paper content, which we won't go into too much what that connection looks like. But yeah, you know, they weren't really able or willing, CDFA or Omri, to, you know, help us with that. You know, they would get in trouble with the USDA National Organic Program. So we've explored multiple ways of trying to solve that with USDA. I you know, could give a side talk on that at some point, you know, what that sort of blow by blow looks like. We're trying a different strategy now compared to the petition model, which is what we did for soil biodegradable mulch film. And we started down that path for compostable products, but it seemed pretty untenable. And the consultant that we had used before, and who's sort of the best of the best for that type of thing, also agreed it wasn't really that tenable the way we were trying to approach it. So we're trying a different approach now. And, you know, having mixed success with that in terms of really looking at a different sort of approach to feedstocks accepted at composters more generally, and a, you know, more legal approach that way to reinterpreting the rule rather than trying to get compostable products added to the national list. So I'm always happy to talk with people about that and hear thoughts on it. We may end up back in a position of petitioning. Very clearly, or very simply, the reason why that looks pretty untenable is we'd have to petition every single individual biopolymer, and it's still not really clear how that would work for blending those materials or blending those with a paper product. So it's not, the system is not well set up for changing that rule, which is why we're looking at more of a rule change rather than adding it to the list.
And real quick, Stephanie, just an observation for Yvonne and Patrick. You guys are in the hauling end of the business, and it seems to be really helping your compost operations. I don't see a lot of the publicly traded companies on here. I think GFL is on here, but that seems to be an issue in the chain of trying to get these materials, is the hauler relationship and whether they're putting the thumb on the generator or not. So why'd you guys get into the hauling side, and do you think it's a key to your success?
Getting in the hauling business was the last thing I ever wanted to do. If you want to buy a hauling business, I'll sell it to you today. No, we started by subcontracting all of our food waste collection, and the business was growing, and we were concerned that, you know, we didn't have that control. And maybe one day that business would go a different direction or decide to get out of it. So it kind of forced us into the hauling business. When what you're saying is exactly right. It helps us control the material that's coming in and the customers that we work for, and need to make sure, you know, at least in the market that I'm in, with where our landfill tipping fees are, you have to want to do this. This isn't, you know, diverting this food waste is not a cost savings. You know, at best we might get you to a cost neutral, but it's not a cost savings.
I will say for us, the way our business is set up, we actually don't make a penny on the compost that we make, because we are strictly the haulers, and then Luke's dad owns a compost. So for us, we saw it as a way to make a difference, not for us, but for our kids. And I grew up in Scotland, obviously don't sound American, and it's just the norm. And I really want composting to be the norm, not the exception. And one way that we knew we could actually make a difference was by doing this. Like, we're not truckers, we're not haulers. My husband's a military pilot, and I was a dance teacher. So we were clueless, but my husband is growing up with the compost facility, and we will kind of jump on, hey, we can do this and we can make a difference in our community. I've lived in 3 different countries, traveled all over the world, and I want to see good things happen. So it wasn't really, for the compost side of things, we knew that we could make a difference for my in-laws, for helping them to be able to produce a better product and be able to control it, because obviously we work very closely together. We're about to move into their backyard, so that will be a good working relationship that we have to help the businesses grow. But really, we'd never wanted to be truckers, but we want to make a difference. And the fact that we can educate and we can get to know our customers, we're very personal. And like the big haulers don't have that luxury of being able to do that because they've grown such a huge business, but we're smaller and we can do it. So yeah, we enjoy it, and it does help the end product, but we do it because our landfills are also filling up fast. And a cool little one of our customers, they're a big hotel here, big hotel and casino. We started a pilot program with the health department, and they agreed to pay 50% of the bill for the first 6 months. And the waste, we were just doing the back of the kitchen, they were filling up 10 bins of food waste, and some of this was amazing food and it was still really good. And the bosses ended up seeing the bill that they were getting, and bear in mind they're only paying half price of what we were sending them because the health department were covering the other half. And they emailed us and said, why are we paying so much in food waste? And we said, this is how much you are throwing out, and this is just your food. So money talks, especially when you talk to high up people. Money is always the key. And they said, well, we want to change this. So they started weighing everything in their kitchen. So they started cutting their waste from the spending. So they weren't buying as much, they weren't prepping as much. And just in 6 months, they cut their food waste in half. So we went from picking up 10 bins when we serviced them to only picking up 5. And they were saving money in the front end. So not only were we stopping the food waste, because ideally we want to be out of business because we don't want to pick up food, especially if it's good food. And we always try and connect the good food, which is a completely other different topic. But that's another piece of the puzzle, that we want to make sure hungry people are fed. And if we can work with the customer and help them cut down their costs, then they'll see for them, a lot of our customers have saved money using us because we've helped educate them on what food waste is and how they can do it better. So I rambled, but sorry, Walter. I hope I answered your question.
Well, I like that you brought up food waste reduction, because I think a lot of us know that that's a first step. And so I'm just thank you for bringing up that point and identifying that, that's a cost-effective way to deal with this, to deal with wasted food. Somebody asked the name of your company again, Yvonne, if you could remind us.
So we are Better Earth Logistics, and we're in Peoria, Illinois. And then the compost facility is Better Earth Compost, or it'll be under LHF Compost, and that's also in Peoria.
Thank you. So I'd like really to get some thoughts from Nora and the rest of you. But Nora, I wanted to bounce back to you because, we've had multiple questions that were asked about, how do you line up products and purchasing with actual back-end processing and capacity? What advice should we give our We Compost partners so that they know what to buy? So are we, is there something that we can move towards as a group now that would lead us to answer just those simple questions?
It's interesting because I think solutions were exchanged as we've been going here, either directly or indirectly. The idea that the composters can start by having more control over what Melissa was saying. I'm not going to repeat everything, but it's, if you know what works at your facility, then work up to your customers. And I know you mentioned AgriCycle in Pittsburgh. They invested the time to really learn about the products out there and then figure out what works in their system. And so that's really important. And I think the overarching sort of umbrella for this conversation and next steps is this idea of standardizing some practices and getting to what Rhodes's solution is, that we just all, there's so much that we can agree on. And for so long, I think, we either we're agreeing or disagreeing, but we're not sort of getting on the same platform. And I know Susan brought this up. So I think it's really important to take the threads that we know work and sort of institutionalize them in a document that the different associations can get behind, because that's the, excuse me for saying this because nothing's easy, but that's the easy part. You all are solving a lot of these challenges. To me, the more challenging part is what Patrick was saying, and it gets to this behavior change on the part of consumers. And there's where I think to bring to that table of all getting on the same page is, what I was reading before with the global commitment. Sorry, it's Global Footprint Day, I think, or something. The global commitment. These are big companies whose consumers are their consumers are their gold. So how can we get them in now if they're looking at compostable packaging and products for certain of their, they're going to go recycling, composting, reusable, then we have to be ready to step up and have that conversation and figure out how to make it work. So I say build on what has been discussed here that works, that composters know they need. Take what Rhodes laid out as sort of a platform, and then use the associations and their various committees to make this all kind of come together. And I really think that's important because we haven't done that. And I think we can't do things that may undermine something. We just got to, sort of bring it all to the table and then solve for what the nitpicky things are and try to get to that standard, consistent practices. Sorry, it's a good question. I can,
That was a good answer. Thank you. Thank you. And actually, Susan, who I think is still here, though I don't see her. Susan, oh, there you are. I don't know why I got used to you. Susan, so to take what Nora said and to make it tangible and actionable, if your suggestion was commit a specialized work group to use an unbiased facilitator and make a commitment to meet regularly to better understand the issues and opportunities, who pays for that? Have you thought about how it actually happens? Not to put you on the spot, but that's just the first thing that comes to me.
Well, the only reference point I really have is our contamination work group in Washington State. And what was happening is similar to what's happening that Nora's describing. I think sometimes when you spend so in my experience, you have all this stuff going on and, you've got one piece really well, and I have one piece I know, and Patrick, and so there's all these things, and you invested all this time and you feel a sense of ownership in it. And I think that, my experience with the Washington Contamination Organics Work Group was, this was a non-hosted event where we all came together and got a facilitator that didn't have even a background in the subject matter, and allowed us to set a clear path to set common goals. So I think that, if we had a place to come do that, to Nora's point and Rhodes's point, and the point we try to make a lot with our clients and cities that we work with, I do think, a specific group, that's dedicated in your area to this progress. And, Seattle's really great at it too. I mean, the Seattle community of recyclers, they're very collaborative and engaged. So yeah, I just think that you have to define where you want to go. And does everybody agree there's a problem? I think you got to start to make sure what are the problems, what are the opportunities? And if you can rally around that and get people to work together, it's a much better energy than working against each other or being confused because you only have one piece. I don't know everything. If people take BPI, we're great with that. If composters don't want to take products, we're great with that. If composters struggle to see whether or not it works, we'll work with you. But everybody has a niche that adds value. And I just think, setting a road and a pathway to do that with common goals would be admirable. It's not always going to be easy, but once you start working as a team, it just changes the whole energy and the whole focus. Yeah. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know we're almost done, and I really want to emphasize something, because what was accomplished in the Washington State Task Force, what was accomplished with the USCC's Compostable Products Task Force, where those things ended up, I think the first step in this effort is to look at, okay, yes, people have spent a lot of time, a lot of volunteer time trying to solve for these things, and they come up with solutions. And I really think a very small group has to kind of cull through all those lessons learned and move forward. Don't start right back there. And so it's really important, Susan, good point to bring up the Washington State Task Force. As I mentioned earlier, one of my takeaways from that is getting a little more standardization. Stephanie, you addressed that within the Chicagoland. So maybe everybody huddles in their region and then brings it forward. I just know we can't rehash. This is, nobody has time for that. Nobody has money for that, but we do need to resolve it. So I'm happy to have a follow-up brainstorm about how to make this workable. You're muted.
Yep, thank you for both. I was going to say thank you and for that. And I do think that was a beautiful segue. I only have one more other point to make, but some people have asked, and I will be sharing, it won't be till next week, but a follow-up, the recording of this, as well as Jennifer Jarland, the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition chair of the board, has taken amazing notes. So there will be a lot to read or listen to again. And so with that email, I will start a very shareable democratic, Google form or Google Doc where people can sign up to participate in something like Nora's talking about, a brainstorming session that leads people to this idea that Susan raised. Maybe it filters into regional teams. Maybe it starts big, we can kind of see where it goes, but those who wish to have a continued conversation with pointed action. I think we've really started something here that I'd like to see move forward. And just on the point of how it happens and how to keep people engaged and who cares, which is my favorite question. Who cares if there's brands who are looking to use compostable plastics in their manufactured products? There's brands that are selling compostable plastics. There's organizations whose owners or CEOs or shareholders, constituents care about this. Does somebody have skin in the game or can put skin in the game? I kind of think like TerraCycles really nailed it because they got a lot, I worked with Solo Cup on the Solo Cup Brigade back in, I don't even know, 2010 or something. And what TerraCycle did was they are an intermediary that has grown huge, but they gave an opportunity to brands who want to do the right thing but don't know how. Pay me and I'll figure out your problem. And so I'm kind of wondering if our industry doesn't have a similar need. And it's not like we press a button and organics facility in Chicago all of a sudden has no problem with contamination. It's not that. But if there was a pool of money, maybe some of that goes to resource some of these things that composters don't have the time for, don't have the capacity for. I just think that there might be more to that idea, but it depends on who cares and who's willing, to step up and underwrite, sponsor, so that's just a final thought to share. And I'm respectful of everyone's time. It's 4:03 Chicago time. So any final, anythings? Thank you guys. It's been just great and nice to see many faces, and I look forward to continuing the conversations with you all. So be well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Stephanie.
It was excellent.
Thanks. Good job.